The bell above the diner's door chimed as the human stepped inside. He looked tired, dust on his boots, a worn satchel slung over one shoulder, and a quiet face that didn't ask for attention. Alien heads turned for a moment, then returned to their meals. Humans were rare on Telvora, especially in this part of the city. The diner, called Sizzlix, was run by a mixed-species crew. But the waitress working the evening shift today was Irina Tall. Blue-skinned woman with soft silver tattoos glowing on her cheekbones, Zyrene noticed the human right away. Not because he made noise, but because he didn't. He sat quietly in booth 7 by the window, watching the purple lights outside flicker over the street. She approached with her notepad and a polite, trained smile. "Welcome to Sizzlix," she said. Her voice smooth. "First time here." The human looked up, his eyes tired but kind. "Yeah, first time," he replied. "Is the food any good?" Zyrene smirked. "Well, I haven't heard anyone die from it yet." He chuckled lightly and opened the digital menu, his fingers sliding through items quickly. Then he said something that made her pause. "I'll take the protein platter," he said. "5 times a day, please." Zyrene blinked, unsure if she heard him right. "Sorry, what?" He nodded, serious, like he had just asked for water. "The protein platter." 5 times a day. Zyrene leaned in, confused. "You mean? You want 5 platters now?" He shook his head. No, just 1 now. But I'll need it again for more times today." Same thing. Her eyebrows rose so high they nearly touched her hairline. 5 times a day. Seriously. She blurted, too loud. A couple of nearby tables went silent. One lizard-like alien turned and stared, whispering something to his friend. The human looked confused. "Is that a problem?" "No," Zyrene said quickly. "No problem at all. Just surprising." She walked away before more questions escaped her mouth, her mind spinning like a broken fan blade. Back in the kitchen, she tossed the order slip onto the counter and muttered, "He wants it 5 times. What kind of metabolism do humans have?" The cook, a furry 4-armed alien named Brix, picked up the ticket and whistled. "Maybe it's not his stomach he's training," he joked. Winking, another waitress, a short red-skinned one named Lely, leaned over. "Wait, what did he say exactly?" Zyrene repeated it, and by the end, Lely was covering her mouth, trying not to laugh. "Maybe humans do things differently," Lely whispered, giggling. Very differently. The rumors started to spread. By the time Zyrene returned with the first protein platter, 3 tables had already passed along the twisted version of the story. The human needs to do something. Intimate, exhausting, impressive. 5 times a day, she placed the platter down with a soft thud. Trying to keep a straight face, the human thanked her and started eating. Calmly, unaware that eyes were watching, whispers spreading, and that several alien girls in the back corner were now blushing and hiding their faces. Zyrene went to clean a table, but her eyes kept drifting back to him. He was just eating calm, focused, and quiet. But the mystery was growing. Was this some human ritual? Some kind of ability, a skill, a biological trait? 5 times a day, she whispered to herself again, shaking her head seriously. What if it wasn't a mistake? What if humans were really built like that? She couldn't stop thinking about it. Something about the way he spoke so normally, so casually, made it worse. He didn't brag, didn't flirt, didn't even smile much. That made the idea even more powerful in their minds. Mysterious, quiet, and apparently able to do something 5 times a day without blinking. By the time the human finished his meal and asked for a refill of water, Zyrene could barely look him in the eye. He smiled and said, "This was good. I'll come back in a few hours," and with that, he left a few credits, stood up, and walked out the door. The moment the door shut behind him, Brix whistled 5 times. Lely added, "I'm not judging, but Wow. Zyrene didn't respond. Her cheeks slightly glowing, she wiped the counter slowly, trying not to smile, but in her mind, one thought kept echoing. I need to know more about this human, and that was just the beginning. Zyrene couldn't sleep that night every time she closed her eyes. That human's calm voice echoed in her mind. 5 times a day, he had said. Like it was the most normal thing in the galaxy. And now? The entire diner staff was whispering about him by morning. The rumors had grown like wildfire across the local network. The message threads were buzzing. Strange human with wild abilities seen at Sizzlix, he eats 5 times a day. But that's not what shocked the waitress. Some even called him the 5-timer. Zyrene sat at her usual booth before her shift started, sipping a hot root blend, her face buried in her hands. This is insane, she muttered. It was just about food, but no one believed her now. Not even her closest friends. Lely leaned over with a wide grin. Be honest, Z. Was it just the food order? Zyrene groaned. Yes, Lely, it was about meals. Human eating schedule, Lely giggled. Sure it was. And next, you'll tell me he only has one heart. Another waitress chimed in. I heard he asked for extra protein because he's in constant training. Training for what? Someone else whispered. A sports event. Or something more physical. Zyrene had enough. She stood up and pointed toward the wall clock. He's coming again soon, she said. You all can watch for yourselves. Sure enough, at the exact same time, the door chimed. Jay stepped in, same calm face, same dusty boots, same quiet energy, but this time, half the diner was waiting for him. He nodded at Zyrene, who met his eyes a bit too quickly, then glanced away. Lely rushed behind the counter, pretending to fix cups, but really just watching him. The kitchen paused all other orders. Everyone was curious. Zyrene approached with her notepad again, but her voice cracked slightly. Welcome back, she said, trying to sound normal. Same order. Jay smiled. Yes, please. The simplicity of his answer only made things worse. To Zyrene, it meant nothing unusual. But to everyone listening, it meant everything. She took the order to the kitchen, but Brix gave her a look. He doesn't look tired, the cook whispered. If I tried 5 times a day, I'd need 2 days to recover. Brix, stop, Zyrene muttered. But a part of her wanted to laugh too. This time, she brought the platter herself and decided to sit for a moment. I need to ask, she said softly. Do you know what everyone thinks you meant? Jace blinked, mid-bite. No, should I be worried? Zyrene took a breath, leaned in closer, and explained at every twisted, strange, embarrassing version of the rumor. When she finished, Jace stared at her, then slowly broke into a loud, surprised laugh. You think I meant that? He gasped, wiping his mouth. Oh no, no, no. It's just my diet plan. Zyrene's face turned violet blue with embarrassment. Well, you could have explained it better, she muttered, crossing her arms. I thought it was normal. He shrugged. Humans eat small meals 5 times daily. Helps with energy, she sighed. On Telvora, people eat once or twice. And only when needed. That explains the shock, Jace said, nodding. I promise, I'm not some strange superhuman. Zyrene smiled, but the sparkle in her eyes said she wasn't completely disappointed. From the counter, Lely watched the two laugh together. Heads leaned close. Looks like she's investigating the rumor directly, she whispered to Brix. He chuckled. Better her than us, I guess. Later, after the meal, Jace paid again and stood, but this time, before leaving, he turned and looked at Zyrene. I'll be back in a few hours, he said with a grin. Meal for coming up? And then he winked just once and walked out the door. Zyrene froze for half a second, heart racing. That wink wasn't in the rumors. That wink was personal, Lely rushed over, see. He winked, I noticed. Zyrene whispered, touching her cheek, which was now glowing softly. Lely smirked, still think it's just about food. Zyrene didn't answer, because now, even she wasn't sure. Zyrene stood behind the counter, arms crossed, staring at the door Jace had just walked out of. The wink had hit her like a shock through the spine, not because it was bold, but because it was. Gentle, warm, and somehow confident, it made her question everything again. Was it really just about food? Or was this human hiding something more, by now? The whole diner staff was whispering again, and this time it wasn't just jokes. He winked at her, Lely whispered, almost jealous. That's a universal signal, right? Bricks chimed in, flipping pancakes. If he really can do everything 5 times a day. I bet winking is just his warm-up. Zyrene groaned, but deep down, part of her wanted to know, and the only way to find out was to ask later that day. Jace returned for his 4th meal, just like he said he would, this time. Zyrene didn't just serve the food, she sat across from him. I want to challenge you, she said, her eyes serious. Jace paused. Halfway into a bite of roasted grocktail, challenge me. You said it's just food. Human diet, your skills are normal, she said. So prove it. He leaned back, curious. What do you mean? Show me what humans can do, she said, tapping the table with a grin. 5 things in one day, 5 skills, 5 actions, 5 surprises. Jace blinked, then laughed. You're serious? Dead serious, Zyrene replied. Impress me, human, for a moment. He studied her, that same calm look in his eyes. Then he nodded slowly. All right, deal, he said. But you have to come with me. Witness each one. Zyrene raised a brow. Fine, she said, standing up. Let's begin. Skill 1. Fixing the broken, they walked down the street to the port maintenance station. A loader bot was sparking in the corner, its control unit dead. The port manager had already called for it to be scrapped. Jace knelt beside it, pulled a small tool from his satchel, and opened a panel. Zyrene watched as his fingers moved quickly, gently, like someone repairing a delicate flower. 5 minutes later, the loader's eyes lit up. Its joints moved smoothly again. It stood, beeped twice, and walked off like nothing happened. The port manager stared in disbelief. What in stars did you do? Jace smiled. Just cleaned out a fried capacitor. Zyrene blinked. That was your first skill? He nodded. 1 down. Skill 2. Comforting the lost near the vendor stalls. They found a small alien child crying alone. Zyrene moved to call security, but Jace knelt beside the child and spoke gently. No translator, no fancy words, just soft gestures and warm eyes. He took a small candy from his pocket, offered it. The child smiled, wiped his eyes, and pointed to a nearby alley. Moments later, Jace walked the child back to his mother, who burst into tears and hugged them both. Zyrene watched silently, heart tight. That was beautiful, she whispered. 2 down, Jace said, walking beside her. Skill 3. Lifting the weight back near the diner. A delivery cart had tipped over, heavy crates scattered. For aliens tried lifting one, but it wouldn't budge. Jace stepped forward, rolled his sleeves, and placed his hands under the crate with a deep breath. He lifted it, muscles straining but face calm. He moved it onto the cart slowly, then helped with the next. And the next, the crowd clapped. Someone whistled. Zyrene's mouth was slightly open. You don't even look tired. 3 down, Jace replied with a shrug, wiping sweat off his forehead. Skill 4. Singing in the bar that evening. They stepped into a noisy music hall. Aliens were shouting, laughing, drinking, until someone yelled, "Let the human sing." Jace smiled and walked to the mic. Zyrene followed close, curious. He sang an old Earth song, slow, deep, emotional. Even though they didn't understand the words, the melody touched something in them. The room grew quiet, eyes locked on him. Zyreen's chest tightened as the song finished. For a moment, she forgot where she was. He walked back and said, "For down." She nodded, speechless, her heart beating faster than before. Skill 5. Making her laugh, they sat under the night sky on a bench outside the diner. The stars shimmered above. And Jace looked at her and said, "You know, on Earth, we don't eat glowing worms." Zyreen frowned. "We don't eat them here either," he grinned. Then explained what I had on my third plate. She laughed so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. He told another joke, and then another, each sillier than the last, by the fifth one. She was leaning on his shoulder, still giggling. "You did it," she said softly. "5 times, I told you," Jace said. "We're not all myths." "Just strange." She looked up at him, her eyes glowing faintly. "You're not strange." "Human," she whispered. "You're something else entirely." Asterisk by the next day. Zyreen couldn't focus on anything else. The memory of Jace fixing machines, helping children, lifting heavy crates, singing softly, and making her laugh, it all replayed in her mind like a dream. She had challenged him half-jokingly, expecting a silly show, but what he gave her was real. Now she wanted more. Not rumors, not stories, but truth. So when Jace entered the diner for his meal, number 1, Zyreen didn't even ask for his order. She simply smiled and said, "We're continuing the test." Jace blinked. "Another 5. She nodded. "But this time, my 5 tasks." He leaned back, amused. "All right, I'm ready. Are you sure?" She asked, eyebrow raised, "Because I won't go easy this time." "Bring it on," Jace said with a grin. "Let's see what you got." Task 1. Understanding emotion, Zyreen took Jace to the garden tower. A quiet place filled with light plants and sound crystals. There, she asked him to listen to a recording, personal one. It was her late father's message before he passed. Filled with sorrow and love, she watched as Jace listened in silence. Not once did he interrupt. Not once did he look away. When the message ended, he turned to her slowly. "Your father loved you deeply," he said, his voice soft. "I can feel it even now." Zyreen blinked fast, holding back tears. "Many people would just say, 'Sorry,'" she whispered. "But you understood." "1 down," he said gently. Task 2. Navigating the chaos, Zyreen took him to the lower markets. A maze of noise, shouting, alien smells, and fast-moving crowds, she said. "Get us through the crowd without using your hands." Jace smiled. "Easy." He tilted his shoulders, leaned, turned, moved like a whisper in the wind. Zyreen followed behind. Stunned, he didn't push anyone. Didn't step on tails or tentacles. He moved with grace, instinct, and purpose. By the time they reached the other side, Zyreen was speechless. "How?" she asked. "Human cities get crowded too," he said with a wink. 2 down. Task 3. Facing pain next, she brought him to the healer's hall, where volunteers helped test minor medical tools. "Take a pain test," she said, handing him a neural sting device. "You just want to hurt me," he joked. "Maybe?" she smiled. "But it's for science," he agreed and sat down. The healer applied the device gently, then turned it on. Zyreen watched his face carefully. He winced, flinched slightly, but didn't scream or pull away. "It burns," he said through clenched teeth. "But it's manageable," she nodded, impressed. Even some warriors cried during this test. 3 down, he said, flexing his hand as it tingled. Task 4. Protect without violence then. Zyreen took him near the city wall, where a wild creature had gotten stuck in a transport unit. The small creature was panicking, hissing, and snapping. The guards wanted to sedate it, but Zyreen said, "Calm it down without hurting it." Jace approached slowly. No tools, no weapons, just a quiet voice. Soft steps and an open hand. He crouched beside the cage and spoke gently. Within minutes, the creature stopped shaking, leaned toward him, and allowed him to free it. The crowd watching let out a quiet cheer. Zyrene smiled wider than ever. "That was beautiful," she said. "For down task 5. Prove you belong finally." She brought him back to the diner late at night. The place was quiet. Only the sound of cleaning bots and humming lights. "This last one," she said, "is not a test." He tilted his head. "Curious, then what is it?" "I want you to look me in the eye," she said softly. "And tell me the truth." Jace stood still, searching her glowing eyes. "Do you like it here?" she asked. "Do you want to stay, or are you just passing by?" There was silence for a moment, just the gentle hum in the background. Then he spoke, slowly. "I was running," he said. "From a war, from noise, from people who didn't care. But here feels quiet, alive, and warm." He looked straight into her. "I wasn't planning to stay," he said. "But now? I think I've already started too." Zyrene's chest tightened, her heart thudding harder than it ever had before. "5, she whispered, her voice shaking. "You did them all, and?" he asked, stepping closer. She didn't answer, just smiled, glowing cheeks and all. But in that moment, something deep shifted between them. The tests were over, but the story had just begun. The night sky over Telvora shimmered with 2 moons, one golden, one pale blue. The streets had grown quieter, but the shadows had not. Zyrene walked with Jace through the back lanes behind the diner, both holding warm cups of glowrote tea. They had talked all day, laughed, challenged each other. And something between them had shifted, something deep and unspoken. "Most people don't let someone test them 5 times in a single day," Zyrene said. Sipping, Jace smiled. "Most people don't offer such strange tests either." She rolled her eyes playfully. "Strange." "Please, I was being polite." He stopped walking. Looked at her gently, and I didn't mind, he said softly. "I wanted to know what you saw in me before she could answer." A voice growled from the shadows. "Well, well. Look who's walking alone tonight." Zyrene turned fast. 3 rough-looking aliens stepped out from the alley. Armor scuffed, eyes glowing with bad intentions. One was a Klax brute with spikes down his back. Another was a thin, sharp-toothed Tharn. And the third wore a patch over one eye. "Is that the famous human?" The Klax chuckled. "The one who eats 5 times a day and flirts with waitresses." Jace stepped in front of Zyrene calmly, his eyes locked on the 3. "Let us pass," he said, voice even. "We don't want trouble." "Too bad," the Tharn hissed, circling. "We do." Zyrene's hand moved to her side, but she had no weapon. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and cornered. Until Jace moved, fast like lightning, his foot swept the Tharn off balance. Elbow struck the Klax before he could lift his arm. And the one-eyed alien barely blinked before Jace had him pinned to the wall. 3 seconds, 3 attackers on the ground. Groaning in pain, Zyrene stood frozen, eyes wide. Jace turned back to her, breathing steady. "Are you all right?" She nodded slowly, still shocked. "You?" "Didn't even flinch. I was trained once," he said simply. A long time ago, they walked away quickly, leaving the attackers moaning in the alley. Zyrene couldn't stop staring at him as they moved through the glowing streets. "You never told me you could fight," she said. Voice quiet. "You never asked," he replied. "I thought you were just some lost traveler," she whispered. "I am," he said, "but I've learned how to stay alive." She paused, reached out and gently took his hand. He didn't pull away. They stood under the soft glow of a neon lamp. "You didn't hurt them badly," she said. Looking at his face, just enough to stop them, he replied. Violence should be the last answer. Her heart pounded. Cyrene had seen many warriors, strong and arrogant, flashy and loud. But this human, he moved with quiet power, controlled grace, and eyes that held pain and wisdom. She looked down at their hands, still together. You're not just strong, she whispered. You're gentle. I wasn't always, Jay said. But I'm trying to be now. She stepped closer. You saved me tonight. You challenged me first, he said with a soft smile. They laughed quietly, the tension fading, replaced by something warmer. The air between them buzzed not with fear, but with something new. Curiosity, admiration, maybe even the start of something deeper. Cyrene glanced up at him, you know? The rumors about you, she said. They might not be wrong after all. He raised an eyebrow. Which ones? She leaned in slightly, eyes sparkling. The ones that say humans are full of surprises. Jace chuckled. Then I'll make sure to surprise you again. They walked back toward the diner under the twin moons. The stars above watching silently. Cyrene didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in cycles, she felt safe, seen. And maybe, just maybe, chosen and the human beside her. He wasn't just passing through anymore. He was becoming a part of her world. Asterisk, the night after the attack. Cyrene didn't go straight home. Instead, she invited Jace into her small rooftop flat above the diner. The city lights sparkled below them, and the stars above twinkled softly like curious eyes watching from the sky. Inside her home was simple, clean cushions, hanging lights, and soft, glowing plants by the window. Jace stood near the edge, looking out. But his eyes weren't on the skyline. They were on her. You have a beautiful view, he said quietly. Cyrene walked over, handed him a warm drink, and sat beside him. I didn't bring you here for the view, she said, her voice softer than before. Jace looked at her, waiting. I wanted to talk, she said, looking down, not as a waitress, not as someone who misunderstood your meal plan, but as someone who hasn't been honest with herself. He tilted his head slightly. Encouraging her to go on, Cyrene took a deep breath. In my world, we don't bond easily, she said. Relationships are arranged, approved by elders, slow, cold, but I never fit into that, she continued. I was always different because you feel too much, Jace said gently. She nodded, blinking fast. I tried to hide it for years, and then one strange human walks into your diner, he said with a small smile, and orders 5 meals. She laughed softly. That was the start. She turned toward him fully now, her glowing tattoos brighter than before, her voice trembling. When I first saw you, I thought you were just tired, she said. But then I saw the way you listened, helped others, moved without fear. I thought I was the one testing you, she whispered. But really, I was falling for you, Jace. Didn't speak, not right away. Instead, he reached out slowly and placed his hand over hers. Cyrene stiffened not out of fear, but because on Telvora, touch like this meant something sacred. Only bonded pairs touched hands like this, fingers gently resting together, palms aligned. You don't have to say anything, she whispered, eyes watering. I know you're just passing through. I'm not, Jace said quietly. Cyrene looked up, shocked. What? I was, he said, running from war, from pain, from noise. But now, he continued, I want to stay. Cyrene's heart skipped, her breath caught in her throat. Why? She asked. What changed? Jace leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers. You, he said, you made this planet feel like home. The words sank into her like a warm wave. No alien male had ever said that. Not to her, not like this. Not with meaning, not with soul. Outside, a soft breeze brushed through the glowing curtains. Inside, Zyrene closed her eyes and whispered, "Then let's make a bond." Jace's eyes widened slightly. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "It's a ritual in my culture, but it's also a promise. One I've never made before." Jace held her hand tighter. "Tell me how." Zyrene stood, walked to the small altar by the window, and pulled out 2 thin crystal bands glowing with blue light. She handed one to Jace. "Place it on my wrist," she said, "and I'll place mine on yours." He obeyed slowly, gently sliding the band onto her skin. Feeling the soft hum of its energy, she did the same to him. And the moment both bands clicked, they began to glow in sync. Then something happened. The tattoos on Zyrene's cheeks shimmered brighter, responding to Jace's pulse, and Jace, he felt a calm warmth in his chest, as if her heartbeat had joined his. "It's done," she whispered. "Now the stars will know." They stood there in silence, their bodies close, their hands still joined, and above them, a shooting star blazed across the sky. Later, they sat side by side on the rooftop cushions, wrapped in a warm blanket. "You know," Jace said, breaking the quiet, "I've been called many things." "Let me guess." Zyrene smiled. "Mysterious, strange, dangerously charming." He laughed. "I was thinking more like problem, soldier, drifter." She looked at him, serious again. "Then let me give you a new name." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Zyrene touched the side of his face and whispered, "My bond." He swallowed, eyes soft. "And you?" he said. "You're not just a waitress with questions anymore?" She smiled wide. "What am I now?" "You," Jace said, brushing her hair from her face, "are the reason I stopped running." And just like that, under the twin moons and the glowing stars, 2 hearts from different worlds beat together in rhythm. The next morning, the diner opened like always. Lights buzzed on, the kitchen warmed up, and customers filed in one by one, but something felt different. Something warm, something quiet, like a hidden secret glowing in the walls. Lely noticed first, standing behind the counter with her usual smirk. She saw Zyrene walk in, not tired, not annoyed, but smiling softly, almost glowing, and beside her, not far behind, was Jace. He wasn't just visiting anymore. He wore an apron, the same brown as the staff uniform. "Is this real?" Lely whispered to Brix, who was flipping griddle cakes. Brix looked up, eyes wide. The human joined the team. "He's not just the 5 meals guy anymore," she said. "He's the bonded guy now." The whispers started again. But this time, they weren't mocking or teasing. They were filled with respect and, maybe, a little awe. Zyrene moved behind the counter, brushing her fingers over the crystal screen, while Jace took a tray of steaming drinks and delivered them like he'd worked there for years. One older customer, a green-skinned elder with faded scales, leaned in and asked, "Zyrene, that's your human now, right?" She blushed a little, nodded with pride. "Yes." "He's mine," the elder smiled. "Good. About time someone brought some excitement into this place." By midday, Jace had taken 5 more orders, none for himself, but near the 6th hour. Zyrene brought out a plate and set it down for him. "Meal 1, she said, smirking, "your routine, remember?" He laughed. "So this is my life now, huh?" She sat across from him, hands folded. "Only if you want it." He looked around the tables, the customers, the laughter, the glow in Zyrene's eyes. "I want it," he said firmly. "More than I've wanted anything in a long time," from across the room. Lely whispered, "He said 5 meals a day and stayed for love." Brix chuckled. "Maybe we should all start eating more." As the day slowed, a small group of travelers came in, speaking another dialect. One looked tired, the other limping, without waiting. Jace walked over and helped the limping one to a seat, grabbing ice and a towel. Zyrene watched from the counter, her heart swelling again. This wasn't just kindness, this was who he was, The same human who listened. Helped, lifted, comforted, protected, and now? Loved. Later, Zyrene brought him a cold drink. He smiled and asked, "How many more tasks do I need to pass to stay permanently?" She raised an eyebrow, leaned close, and whispered, "You already passed the hardest one." "Oh." He said, eyes amused. "Which one was that?" "Letting me in," she replied, touching his hand lightly, that night. After the last table cleared and the lights dimmed, Zyrene and Jace sat outside the diner again. Just like before, same stars above, same quiet buzz in the air. But now, no uncertainty, no distance, just peace. "I used to think humans were strange," Zyrene said, resting her head on his shoulder. "Loud, impulsive. Unpredictable, fair," Jace replied. "We are, but then you came in," she continued. "And you didn't shout, didn't demand. You just showed up, quietly, again and again. 5 times a day," he joked. She laughed, nudging him. "Stop it. Can I ask you something?" He said after a pause. "Anything," she replied. "Do you think the stars care that we're different?" He asked, "That I'm human and you're beautifully alien?" Zyrene looked up at the sky, then back at him. "No," she said. "Because I think the stars waited for this." Jace smiled, eyes soft. "So what now?" He asked, "What's the new routine?" She sat up and held his hand again, their crystal bands softly pulsing together. "You wake up," she said. "You eat your 5 meals, right?" He nodded. "You help the customers, maybe sing once a week," she teased. "I can do that," he chuckled. "And every night," she said seriously. "You come home to me?" He nodded slowly. "That's the kind of routine I could live with forever." And they sat there, not needing to say anything else, because sometimes, in a galaxy full of noise, war, and chaos, all it takes is a quiet diner, a gentle waitress, and a hungry human to start a love story no one expected. Even if it all began with the words, 5 times a day, seriously.